Discovery Day. This is by far one of the worst days you as a woman will ever experience in your life. And unless you've experienced this day, it's not going to be totally understood. This is the worst day of many women's lives. It was a day you began to discover his secret life that has changed your life forever. This is a demarcation in your story. This wasn't supposed to be your story, okay? This wasn't supposed to be what you signed up for. He promised he never would. Dr. Weiss, how do I put our past life together? How do I put my present life in some kind of way that makes sense to me? And how in the world am I ever going to try to create a future or even think about a future? Now understand, this is a question every partner has, and it's a real question. Because D-Day is awful. It transforms and transfigures and it morphs your entire reality. Now, I have sat through Discovery Days. She receives the truth of his infidelity, his sexual addiction, or his intimacy anorexia. The screams, the yelling, the crying, the literally blank stare that this trauma can have, the convulsing and crying. I have sat through more traumas being happening right in front of me than probably most therapists alive today, because we're getting to the truth. We're not kind of sort of talking about it. When I wrote this whole book and this whole series, it was the most painful things I've ever done. Because line after line, I could see a woman's face. I could see her crying. I could see her convulsing. I could see her screaming and saying all kinds of things. D-Day is awful. There's no way. This is the day trauma was exposed, or betrayal was exposed rather, and trauma started. It's the day the bullet went in. It's the day of the car wreck. It's the day that you will remember for quite a long time, when you discovered the phone number, discovered the other woman, discovered that this really isn't love, what's happening in my marriage. Discovery Day is different, but there are several factors I would like to talk about. Now, you will have your own experience. And again, I can't say that enough. Every woman is unique herself. Every experience is unique. And so there's no way you're going to have the same exact experiences before in your betrayal, but the betrayal itself, the type of, the person you are, and the type of person you're going to morph and become. All of them are variables. Now, I've literally heard probably at least a couple thousand or more direct D-Days. Okay, I've been doing this for over 30 years. So here's a factor. One is the factor of the quality of marriage. Discovery of betrayal happens in a relationship context. If the relationship has been relatively healthy, you know, we're getting along, we have a lot in common, we're spiritually and emotionally close, okay? That fortifies you somewhat so that you're a little stronger when you get hit by the bullet of being betrayed. You're a little stronger when the car hits you, okay? It's like if someone's in pretty good shape and they get in a car wreck, they're different than someone who's been starved and neglected, okay? If the relationship is not healthy, it can drain the woman of valid nutrition, and the hurt and frustration going into the betrayal can actually expedite the trauma. And especially if you're in an intimacy anorexic marriage, you already feel very dry, and then you get punched with the kind of whatever betrayals that you've experienced. Now, in a healthy marriage, it feels like you're friends. In an unhealthy marriage, it feels like you're in a functionship or a roommate relationship, okay? So that's one variable, the quality of your marriage. Another variable, were they caught or did they disclose? Now, disclosing is when a man is so sick and tired of being sick and tired of his double life. He knows he needs to stop. He picks a time and a location, and he discloses the history of when it started, the behaviors in his betrayal, generally. I mean, not specifically, but generally. It started here, here's what I did. Now, for it to be disclosure, it would have to be 100% have to come from his intentional conviction to change, to heal, and stop his secret life. Okay, now I got to stop because a lot of guys, if you're watching this and your wife found this and found that and found this, and then you're telling people, oh, I told her, you didn't tell her, that's getting caught. If there's suspicions and she's asking you about something, you got caught. Okay, disclosure is there was nothing that she was detecting. There was no reason for you to disclose this other than as a man, you just manned up and said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. What I'm doing is wrong to you, to me, to everyone. And I got to stop. And I just want to be honest with you and tell you, and whatever happens, happens, but I just got to be honest. I need to man up. That is disclosure, okay? Everything else is getting caught, okay? And getting caught, I could write a whole book on the many ways men get caught. Okay, but if there is a suspicions and questions and interrogations and finding an email or finding a phone number or some other person's clothes in the car or that's getting caught. Okay, now the reason getting caught is different because it doesn't come from necessarily inside the man. It's coming from circumstances. It's coming from a context. So how you receive D-Day makes a difference in your D-Day, okay? And if he's getting caught, that's a totally different experience than if he disclosed. The husband who is caught could end up minimizing. It's not that, it's someone else's. They could lie. They could only answer the very specific questions you're asking them, but really the story is really, really big. They could blame you. They could blame your body, your sex, the house, the kids, the dog, anything. Blaming is the worst when it comes to disclosure, okay? They can maybe share a different experience than what actually happened, okay? They can just they can just share what they already know. But regardless of what information they share, this is going to be traumatic for you. This is where betrayal starts for you, okay? And so how? Getting caught or disclosed is a variable. Another variable for your D-Day is one or multiple disclosures. Partners experience disclosure in these two ways. It's a one-time event where all the general information is revealed, okay? When, who, what, all of that. Basic information, how long, and it's disclosed voluntarily. It's like a purge, okay? Now, that's fantastic, okay? And now there are some, believe it or not, there are counselors who are actually trained in a different model. That's why if you go to a counselor, make sure that I would really encourage them to come from the ASAT, aasat.org, go there. But there are actually some counselors who actually stop the person who's committed infidelity or sexual addiction to wait for many months or even years to disclose the truth to their wife. And that is a sad way to do it. There's so much anxiety for the wife, and she stays in a state of mistrust. She stays in an aggravated state, and they complain about why the wife isn't changing. Well, she doesn't have the truth. Okay? Now, remember, not all therapists that say they treat sex addiction actually have any training. You know, I Googled myself. In several large cities, 90% of those who say they treat sex addiction have no certification, no training on it. So be careful about what you're doing there, especially if you're going to a therapist to get disclosure. Okay? Now, I have so many women who've been in pain from delayed disclosure. I mean, it's the most painful thing. If you know something's going on, it's really, really important for that. Now, dribble disclosure is the worst. It's where you find out a little bit, he tells you a little bit. You find out more, he tells you more. And it's always like you're having to be the investigator to find out. This is not an honest man yet. He is not spiritually, emotionally mature, which most addicts would not be, okay? And so especially if there's not a polygraph involved, the chances of you getting the full truth at one time, very, very rare. So dribble is kind of like you get some information, you get betrayed, then there's trauma. You get up a little bit, you get punched again. You get up, you get punched again. You get up, you get punched again. You get up, you get punched again. This can go on for many, many months or years. Okay, so it's really important that the polygraph is part of disclosure at some point so that you know, whew, you know, I did one just recently where the guy did everything right, told her everything, and just verify that. And so for many months, she's been living in reality. I've been in many disclosures where it didn't go so well. She knew less than 10% of what actually happened. I've seen the lightning bolt of trauma hit her right in my chair. Okay? So, the dribble or the many disclosure is a different variable on your D-Day. And I'm just sharing these variables with you because your day was different than other women's. And I want you to understand why. Okay? Now, his response to heal, that's another variable. Okay? Because this is the worst day of your life. Okay? And one of the variables I see is his response to heal. Now, if he's coming from self-disclosure, then more likely he wants to get better. More likely he's like, hey, this is a problem. I've already talked to my friend or my pastor or a counselor, and I have groups lined up. Here's what I'm going to do. I got to stop this, and I'm really sad and sorry I hurt you. Okay? But if it's kind of the blame and dribble and all that kind of stuff, and he's not really that excited about going to a counselor, and he definitely doesn't want to come do an intensive or get a polygraph, wow, you're going to be really challenged on D-Day because it's like, wait, you shoot me, and then you don't want to take any responsibility for having the gun, loading the gun. You get my point. All right? Not taking responsibility is a variable. Okay, so the response to healing. Another variable is your own trauma history. Whether you have family of origin trauma, sexual abuse trauma, rape traumas, financial traumas, spiritual traumas, all other kinds of traumas. That's a variable in how you experience D-Day, and it could go in any direction. Maybe you have a significant trauma history. This is just one more, and you're already kind of tough, and you know, okay, I'm going to get through this. Or you have all those traumas, and it's another fracture, and it takes you back a step further. Or you have no trauma, and this is your first one, and it's the worst kind of trauma you can experience interpersonally, okay? And so there's all kinds of variables, especially you might have found his porn stash. You might have been exposed to a person's name or images, okay? If they're anonymous others, that's a variable. Then there's the others. So let's talk about others. Others is a variable all by itself. Others can be the porn. It can be images. It can be chat rooms. It can be kind of anonymous others, hookups, strip people, people who are professional services sexually. There's those kind of others that are kind of anonymous and unknown. And then there are the others that are as coworkers, remote acquaintances, girlfriends of yours, neighbors of yours, family members of yours, close friends of yours. Those others, that's a huge betrayal all by itself, because these others that you know have betrayed you, sometimes they've been in your house, been to your Christmas party, you've helped them through a tough time. So that can be another factor, is how others is involved on your D-Day disclosure.